lonely here without you, man. I mean, you know our bromance is real when I just miss you, George. It's good to see your face, but I wish you were here with me.
Virtually, it feels good, my man. You know, I'm out in Long Island. It's one of the few places that I can confidently say is worse than Jersey. Connecticut, Long Island, Staten Island. Don't bash on Jersey at all. You guys got nowhere to stand on that. But you know what's great, no matter what, is Kurt Warner, the Hall of Fame quarterback, the analyst on NFL Network, who stopped by the show. So Trav has a long convo with him. We'll toss to that in a second. We also have, as always, on our Friday edition of Rush, the great Michael Lombardi stopping by as well, giving us a little take on the Rams loss for the Patriots, where they fell to the Rams, but also on Drake Maye down the road. But now I'll send it over to Trav and his combo with Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner on Drake Maye.
An honor to have the great Kurt Warner with us, NFL Network analyst Kurt Warner. You can see Kurt every Sunday on NFL Network, NFL Game Day morning at 9 a.m. I always spend my Sunday mornings with you, my man. We appreciate you joining us here.
We appreciate you watching with us on Sunday mornings.
All right, look, now we're going to show this tweet. You've been high on Drake Maye, and we love that around here. So what I want to do with you, we were talking off camera a little bit about the X's and O's of the game. Tell us, what do you see when you break this kid down? Because we know you love him, and you know we love him around here, Kurt.
I mean, the first thing people have to understand when I break down tape, the most important thing for me, especially with rookie quarterbacks, is are they getting their eyes in the right spot? Because that to me is where the position always starts, is you got to know where you start in the process, you know? And obviously there's lots of reasons for where you start, you know, the concept that you're reading, obviously the coaching that you're getting, what the defense is giving you, all of those things. But that's the first thing that I look at. And so the more a young quarterback can have his eyes in the right spot, so he's in the right starting place, obviously, the more he's going to have success. But the more I look at it and go, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. And that, to me, is the biggest thing. You might miss some. I mean, you're going to miss some throws. Like every quarterback misses throws in the course of the game. You know, I've got a son that plays college football. And he'll miss 2 or 3 throws in a game. And, you know, he'd call, Dad, I played terrible. And I'm like, you should sit down and watch NFL tape with me. Like, every NFL quarterback misses 5, 6, 7 throws easy in a game. You know, like it's hard to do. And so, you know, when a lot of people will look at stats and they'll look at touchdown passes and you know, they'll look at incompletions and all that stuff, I don't. You know, although that obviously plays a part, but I look at, are they going through the process the right way? Are they throwing it to the right guy? Are they seeing what they're supposed to be seeing? And then, of course, the next step is when they do that, are they getting the ball in the right manner to the right guy on a consistent basis? And so in this past game with Drake Maye, I just feel like he's really got a great understanding of what he's trying to do from the time the ball is snapped. And his technique is actually better than coming out of college. And even in preseason, there were a number of the technical issues that would cost him at times. I think he's cleaned a lot of that stuff up. He looks different from the technique standpoint on top of it. So when you put all that together and then you add in, you know, there's times that I kind of scratch my head on what exactly the Patriots are trying to do on a concept and the spacing that's there that doesn't necessarily allow Drake or any quarterback to, you know, to fully have success, you know, with what the concept. So you put all that together, and that's what I'm seeing from Drake Maye, is that he's making good decisions and he's consistently getting his eyes in the right spot. And when things aren't clean, you know, he's still doing something good with the football. And so you put all that together, and you know, I've been really surprised. You know, and I'm one that, you know, I'm never afraid to say, hey, I didn't necessarily see this coming out of college. Yeah. Because in college, you get what you get. Like, you don't know who a player is or if they can be better at the NFL level or any of that stuff when they're in college. So you have to go off of what you saw. And, you know, his senior year at North Carolina, or I mean his last year at North Carolina, you know, it was like the technique wasn't there. His feet were all over the place. He looked uncomfortable in the pocket. He missed a lot of easy throws. And so you go off of that coming into what I've seen this year. And I've been really, really impressed with, you know, the complete package that I've seen from Drake Maye, you know, here early in his career.
Kurt, when you say lack of spacing in the play design, take us into what can Alex Van Pelt do better to maybe set Drake Maye up for even more success so far in this rookie campaign? What do you see play calling wise that the Patriots can be better at for this kid?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about spacing, the whole goal in playing offensive football, specifically when you're playing against a zone defense, right? Man-to-man is a different beast, but when you're playing against zone defense, is you're trying to stretch defenders, right? You're trying to figure out how much space a defender can cover, and then our goal is to put pressure on him or put him in conflict, I always like to say. So, for instance, if there's a guy that's that has to cover the flat area of the field, and there's only one guy. So like a cover 2 defense, and the corner has to come down and cover the flat. The goal is to put somebody over the top of him and somebody underneath him and make him make a decision. Are you going to go deep or are you going to go short? Mm-hmm. But the key for a play designer and a key for a quarterback is there has to be enough space between those two receivers so that if the defender stays low, I actually have enough room to throw it over the top of him. And so that's kind of a simple analogy of sometimes when I watch what New England does, I say to myself, well, that one defender can cover both of those guys.
Right.
And so Drake's trying to read over there, and he really doesn't have a shot unless the underneath guy's open, right? Unless the defender just falls off and he can throw it to the underneath guy. He doesn't really have a shot at the over-the-top guy because there's not enough spacing between the two. I did a little piece on my YouTube page, QB Confidential on YouTube, a couple weeks ago on just a few of the concepts, 5 or 6 of the concepts from one of the games of New England. And it was kind of based on that same thing. And some, I believe, is more play design because I've seen it happen a few times. Yeah. And then other times I wonder if it's more, player related where they just don't stay true to the details of a play. Right. And then they get too tight together. And then Drake doesn't have the spacing to be able to create, a throw. And so that's basically, what we're always talking about is creating spacing, right? Is trying to create. I always talk about it. If I can force a defender to cover both width and depth. So instead of just letting them, cover width, one way or just cover depth, I'm trying to get them to cover both. So they have to move sideways and they have to get depth. Right. Or we can beat them. And so a lot of that spacing and play design and detail of plays is all with that mindset of how do I conflict this guy, whoever that is on a particular defense, conflict him as much as possible and as quickly as possible, right? Mm-hmm. That's what helps the quarterback. The sooner I can read movement of a defender or lack of movement, right? If I'm throwing a flat and the flat defender doesn't move, okay, that gives me an indication. If I'm trying to throw a flat and something over the top and I get the flat defender to move really fast, that gives me a quick indication of where I go with the football and a quick read. And so to me, a play designer should always be trying to do that. I'm always trying to influence guys to get my primary guy open and to give my quarterback a read as quickly as I possibly can so he can either work through his progressions or he can get the ball out of his hands really, really fast.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, I've been really impressed with his accuracy, too. So if the play calling, to your point, I mean, if we could scheme guys open even, this kid can put it on the money where it needs to be. I want to talk intangibles with Drake Maye because I always felt like, Kurt, you led the league in intangibles. So as I sort of look at this kid, even hearing you talk about how he cleaned up footwork, how his processing seems much faster than what you saw in college to now, he clearly has a work ethic. I mean, intangible-wise, leadership, work ethic, are you seeing these things in Drake Maye as well?
Well, no doubt. But again, I'm seeing it from afar. I know him a little bit, but I do know some people that know him very well. And everybody that I've talked to that knows him very well has said and told me during the process, hey, this guy wants to be great. This guy has the work ethic. This guy has the mindset to be everything you want in a franchise quarterback. And so, you hear that already. And just watching him in interviews and hearing him talk, it sure feels like that on top of what everybody said. But then, when you see it, play out the way that it has, and you see that, like you said, he must have put in some work. He seems to be a student of the game, seems to really know what he's doing at a young stage. Those are great signs, with the fact that he does have physical gifts. He does have physical skills. And I'm always going to argue the other things are more important. But if you can have all those other things and the physical traits on top of it, that's what every team is looking for. That's what every team wants to have. And it sure seems like, he's got, a lot of things in that bucket, and especially early in his career.
What's the best way to build around it? Because, look, right now, you look at this roster, Kurt. The Patriots, it's a Christmas wish list in terms of what they need. You need offensive linemen. You need wide receivers. Hell, you need playmakers. How do you sort of build around this guy? Is it all the above? What's the most important in terms of building around him, building blocks-wise? Where would you start?
I think as a quarterback, we always want to start with skill players. And, so for when I was with the Greatest Show on Turf, or even when I was in Arizona, I had some great playmakers around me. And so, I always like to think that direction. But I think a lot of it can really depend on who your quarterback is and what he does well. So, let me look at Cincinnati. We can look at Cincinnati, and I know, one of the first things that jumps out is you say, gosh, can we just give up Joe Burrow an offensive line? And I agree with that. But I think Joe Burrow is a guy that processes information extremely fast, maybe as fast as anybody in the league, gets the ball out of his hands. So in a situation like that, which again is, I reference back to myself, that's what I did really well. And so for me, I could work with an offensive line that wasn't great, because if I had playmakers, I'd get the ball out and we would have success based on dealing the football. So, if you have a quarterback like that, I don't mind going and getting a Jamar Chase, going and getting one of these top-notch, wide receivers, because your quarterback understands how to use them, and you understand how to use them, and you can cover some of the things on the offensive line. But if you don't have one of those guys, and even if in general we're talking about it, I think, I go and look at the Detroit Lions, and I say to myself, they took the approach that, they got all kinds of playmakers now, but they took the approach that we are going to build the best offensive line in football. Mm-hmm. And we are going to make the life of our quarterback easier in one way or another. And for them, it starts with running the football, taking the pressure off Jared Goff. So Jared Goff has played great, but he's throwing the ball 25 times a game, 18 times a game, low 30s every game, and he's able to have great success because they have great balance. Mm-hmm. And, the more I watch teams, the more you watch teams that get to the playoffs and have, runs in the playoffs, it's the teams that have great offensive lines. And that, to me, is where I would probably start. Okay. Believing I can scheme up my playmakers to get open against man coverage. I can have good schemes against zone coverage, where I feel like just about everybody that's in the NFL, if you can do the right thing and catch the ball, we can have success against zone coverage based on scheme. And so I really think, if you could build it a certain way, that I would build offensive line first, and then fill in the gaps and try to maybe steal some of these, really good playmakers a little bit later in the draft where I can, just because I've seen that work. Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts, there's certain limitations that he has as a quarterback. Right. But when you give him an offensive line in a run game, he's shown himself to be a really good NFL quarterback. And so when they put it on his shoulders and they didn't have a great offensive line, they weren't running the football, he looked very average. But then you put those pieces around him. And so the more I see teams that can do that and can dominate up front and can win the line of scrimmage, the easier it makes it for the quarterback. And so I really think if I was in a GM role, I would try to build there first and get some really good pieces up in front of him. Yeah. And then try to find those playmakers outside of that.
If you want more dope interviews like this one, check out Nesson's Daily Sports Podcast. Boston has entered the chat. You can enter the conversation by hitting us up. Email the chat@nesson.com. Boston has entered the chat, is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever else podcasts are found. Hey, brother, it's not just New England. I mean, Washington's got to figure out with Jayden Daniels. The Bears have to figure it out with Caleb. Obviously, we know Peyton's doing a great job out in Denver with Bo Nix. When you look at the rest of the rookie class, do you like these guys? I mean, what do you make of Caleb? What do you make of Jayden? What do you think of Bo Nix? Do you like these guys as much as you do Drake Maye? Is sort of, if I guess you had to rank them in a way, are they still on that? You're high on Drake Maye. Are you high on these other guys?
I mean, I am. I think Jayden obviously has been the best rookie quarterback, of the year. And, he's just been great. He's seen it. He's had a plan. He understands what he's doing. He's very poised and calm in the pocket. His technique is really good. I mean, he's just been phenomenal for a rookie. And so it's been fun to watch him. Bo Nix, I think, has gotten better and better every week. I think, as you said, Coach Payton has done a great job of really making the game easier for him. Like last week, he threw 4 touchdown passes, but 2 of them were wide receiver screens, and the other one was just a great play design where he threw a shallow route, and there was nobody within 10 yards of the shallow runner. And so Coach Payton has really done a great job of utilizing the skills of Bo Nix, but also, what they have offensively. Another luxury for a young quarterback is a great defense. They have a great defense in Denver. But, I mean, I think he's on the upswing, and he's shown that he can do a lot of things that you need your franchise quarterback to do to be successful. So I really like him as well. I've seen glimpses from Caleb. I don't think Caleb sees it as well as Jayden and Drake have been seeing it. And so and he hasn't had the luxury of some of those easy plays like Bo Nix has. And so – my verdict's still out on Caleb on where he is and who he's going to be. I called his game over in London, and he was great in that game. Threw 4 touchdowns in that game, had great command of the ball. So those are all things that you really like, but he's got to really start seeing the game better and seeing it quicker, if he's going to kind of step into the same realm as those other guys. But you see definitely the ability when things are right for him, you see, that he could be really, really good.
Yeah.
It's just, you just don't know quite yet because we haven't seen it kind of come together.
I really like this draft class. I think the future's bright for all these guys. I agree with everything you're saying there, but I tell you what, your ex-team, the Giants, my goodness gracious, Daniel Jones. I mean, it feels like that's the end of his era there in New York. What went wrong from the outside looking in with him? And do you think his career is salvageable? Or is he, is he a backup quarterback in the league? As I look at him, Kurt, I feel like he's a decent backup. I don't know if he's going to get an opportunity to be a starter.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I think we kind of know what Daniel Jones is. And I actually felt like he's played, outside of the first game and his last game, I feel like he's played pretty decent quarterback this year. I just think the bottom line is he doesn't make all the plays he's supposed to make.
Mm-hmm.
He's not really a guy that elevates you and makes plays that he's not supposed to make. And so he's just kind of shown himself to be that kind of mid-level quarterback. And, I'm a believer that, and I always use Andy Dalton as an example. I'm a huge fan of Andy Dalton. I think he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the in the world, and should be a starter in the National Football League. But the thing about Andy is that, he doesn't give you anything really extra physically. And so he's going to be a starting quarterback. Let's just say I always kind of rank it like 0 to 100. Okay, so we have a ranking and it's 0 to 100. And to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, you have to reach 75.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Dalton reaches that threshold of 75.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because of really anything physically. It's because of the things that he does. He makes the right decisions. He's accurate with the football. He can anticipate. He can do all this, all I guess the things that are away from the athletic part of playing the position.
Right.
But he does it really well. And so that's our threshold. So he's probably never going to carry me to a Super Bowl. But if we put a team around him, he's a good enough starter that we can win with him, and he showed that in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. And I think Cincinnati finally realized, okay, he did exactly what we needed him to do, won the division, went to the playoffs every year, but we couldn't win in the playoffs because Andy couldn't quite elevate us above that. So we went and got Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow gives us all of what Andy does and then extra.
Right.
And so the bottom line for me is if you want to start in the National Football League, you got to be Andy Dalton. And so when I look at Daniel Jones, he reminds me a lot of what an Andy Dalton is. He's just not, he just doesn't change the complexion of the game with anything that he does physically. Right. So now you've got to do all those mental things. Now, he can run and do some things extending, but you got to do all those mental things. Or when there's a layup there to be had, you got to make the layups.
That's right.
And that's what Daniel Jones hasn't done enough. And so to me, he doesn't meet that 75 ranked threshold because he's just not consistent enough on those other things that he has to be able to do because, he can't elevate us in other ways. Can't elevate us with his arm, or he can't elevate us by running around like Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray and creating plays. And so that to me is where he's missing. And, and I agree with you. Not that he can't be a starter in the National Football League. I just don't know if he can ever be that high-end starter that transcends and transforms a team. I think if he's a starter, and you got to have a good team around him, and you guys will have a chance to win some games, but I don't know how far you can really go. Or he's a really good backup in this league for a long time and can come in and give you 2 or 3 really good games, or he can come in and win some games for you. But maybe not 17 of them just because of the lack of consistency that's there.
Yeah, I'm going with that one. I think he's a backup quarterback in this league that can be a spot starter for you. I'll tell you what, though, Kurt, hearing you talk about that, being a backup may be good for him because now you're diving more into the minutia of the game. Maybe he has to pour in to those fundamentals that you're talking about that he kind of lacks. I'll tell you what, your former team, the Cardinals, have no such QB conundrum there. This kid, Kyler Murray, is balling. Now, here's my take on him, and I want you to tell me if I'm out of bounds or if I'm being fair. I look at him, I see the stats, I see the eye-popping plays, but I never felt like he wins enough. This season, Cardinals are shocking some people. He's playing well. Does he need sort of a validation season here, Kurt, in your mind? Like, do they need to get in the playoffs? Do they need a deep run? Or is this guy kind of empty calories? He puts up numbers, but he's not really a leader. What do you see with him?
I think the biggest thing with Kyler is, he's kind of more of the opposite of like an Andy Dalton. And so he transcends in so many ways physically. Unbelievably gifted thrower. Like a lot of people see the athleticism.
Right.
But he is a gifted thrower of the football. Throws it extremely well. And then he's got, obviously, the athletic ability to run around and make the crazy plays. Now, what I believe he has to do is he's got to come back and start making more of the layups. Seeing things better from inside the pocket, making the easy throws, seeing the throws that are in front of him, to elevate his game above that kind of 75, right? Because that 75, you can get there a lot of different ways.
Right.
You can be 74 athletic and one pocket passer, let's just say, and get to 75. Or you can be 75 pocket passer like Andy Dalton and 0 athletic, or vice versa, and you can still get there. And so I think Kyler leans more towards that threshold because of the athletic ability.
Yes.
And now the other part needs to kind of come along. The beautiful thing this year with the Cardinals is they're not winning all based on Kyler Murray. I think there has been some times where it's been about Kyler having to elevate himself above 75 and not having the pieces around him. And, they struggle to do that, or they would win just enough. Like you said, they would win, just enough, but not a lot. And I think it fell into that. So, I really think it comes down to 2 things. I mean, the team around him is playing really well. This team isn't really going through Kyler Murray. It's going through James Conner and the physicality part of it. And Kyler gets to be a complementary piece with all the gifts and talents he's got. Perfect. Now they have a chance to really be successful and do the things that they're doing this year. Or I should say either or and. Kyler, if he's able to elevate his game in those other areas. And, and I really think that the biggest question with Kyler is when we have to count on you in games to throw 45 times and to make the right decisions and make the layups and consistently play the position without being able to, to run around and be athletic, because that's great, but we need to be able to win in situations where you're not able to do that, when a team takes that away. And I think that's the question, ultimately that he's going to have to answer as a franchise quarterback at some point is, do we see this guy as a guy that no matter what the situation, no matter what's around him, that he can give us a chance based on being a complete quarterback? Because, I think we've just seen enough in this league. No matter how great you are as an athlete, it is tough to live in that world week in and week out. Like, it is tough to expect your quarterback, or even if you're that quarterback, to expect yourself to be able to make 10, 12, 15 of those special athletic plays a game. And that could be a special throw or a special run or a special buy time and create. It's hard to count on that every week. So you've got to be able to do the other stuff. And I think that's why we see the Josh Allens, Lamar Jacksons, the Patrick Mahomes always in the MVP conversation and always having their team in the playoff mix, because they can do both things. And specifically with Lamar and Josh, they've gotten so much better at playing the game, at taking the layups, at making it easier upon themselves so they don't have to create these crazy plays 10 and 12 times a game for their team to have a chance. Now they play the game and they give their team a chance, and then they elevate their team with the one or two special plays that they have to make. Now you've got these transcendent quarterbacks, which I believe Kyler has the ability to be.
Yes.
But he's got to grow in those other areas, in my opinion, to be able to step to that next phase and truly become that guy that we're talking about every year, as having his team in the mix and being in the MVP mix, because he's got both aspects of his game.
Man, Kurt, you are preaching the quarterback gospel. Listen, I'll tell you what, you have a great point about sort of taking the layups, particularly with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, because the proof is in the pudding. In the postseason, it seems like those guys are pressing more. They're not taking the layups. They're trying to make the splashy plays. Their teams become too dependent on them to do that. And in the playoffs, they haven't had the success. Whereas Mahomes is exactly what you described. Mahomes in the postseason, the defense is taking away that, no problem. I'll dink and dunk you. He'll take what the defense gives him, and he has all the trophies. Look, I can't talk Cardinals with you. I know we're talking QBs, but I can't talk Cardinals with you and let you go without giving me a Larry Fitzgerald story. Kurt, I need it. We the people need it. Give us a Larry Fitzgerald story before we get out of here. We all love him.
I mean, and everybody should love him because he's unbelievable. There's so many great stories about Larry. I think the great thing to me about Larry, as a player, and I mean, obviously it speaks to the character and the person as well, is how he always stepped up to the challenge that was placed in front of him. That, he was a really good receiver when I got there. And I challenged him very early to do some things different, to push the envelope in some certain ways, because I really felt like if he honed in on his route running skills to go along with his physical. So it's very similar to what we're talking about with quarterbacks, right?
Right.
He had all the physical skills. Now bring the details and for a wide receiver, the understanding of the why, to the athleticism. And so I challenged him very early in some of those things.
Right.
And it was fun to watch him step up to the challenge. I remember a time when Todd Haley challenged him to block on the outside and say, hey, you're going to have great contributions catching the football, and I know that's what you want to do, but hey, this is a team sport.
Right.
Get out there on the edge and block for your guys and help them get big plays. Like, be a complete player. And then I remember, us showing video of Larry out on the edge blocking and dominating people because he was challenged in that manner. And then I think about it later in his career. When I was with Larry, I begged Larry to go into the slot. I'm like, Larry, just be willing to go inside, and we can do so many things and create so many things for you, and it's harder to double team you and all this stuff. And early in his career, Larry's like, you know what? It's really fast in there. There's a lot of bodies in there. I just keep me out on the edge and let me be comfortable. And then Bruce Arians got there, and Bruce Arians said, hey, if you're going to prolong your career, you have to go inside.
Wow.
And, and he didn't really want to do it, but he accepted that challenge from Bruce and went inside and had some of his most productive years inside as a slot receiver when some of that athleticism had left him and he wasn't the same player, yet he still would have more catches and more yards than he did early in his career. And so I think those are kind of the stories when I think about the player of Larry Fitzgerald that really speak to his greatness, is the ability to evolve and the ability to grow and the ability to always be coachable and to challenge himself in different phases throughout the entirety of his career. And it's why, he just kept getting better. I mean, I think about Tom Brady out there when you're talking about the Patriots, and that was the thing that always impressed me about Tom, is that, we talk about ceilings all the time. And somehow we think we know somebody's ceiling, which we never do.
Right.
But the most beautiful thing is when we realize that these guys, they keep chasing their ceiling. And as good as they are, they never settle and they go, can I be better? Can I be better? Can I be better? And that's who Larry Fitzgerald was. And that's who Tom Brady was, is every year he looked to get better. And, we thought by the time he was 33, it was like, you don't have to get any better. Just stay like this for another 10 years and you're going to be the best to ever do it. Yet he just continued to push and see. And, his ceiling was so high as a quarterback because he kept kind of challenging, you put the ceiling here, I'm going to bust through it and see if it works to be a little bit higher. And, I think the great players have that. And to me, that was what I appreciated so much about Larry was, sometimes it took a little pushing and prodding, but every time he accepted the challenge and pushed himself further. And it's why, I think he's one of the, top 3 wide receivers that we've ever seen in this game because of those.
I completely agree with that. Hey, you brought up Tom Brady in that story about Larry Fitzgerald. I want to ask you, because I always felt like the greatest show on turf opened the portal for what would be the Patriots dynasty. When you look back all these years later on that Super Bowl that you lost to the Patriots, is there a moment from that game or a story from that game that stands out to you?
I mean, I think there's lots of storylines, obviously, when you play in those games and you go back and think about a lot of things. But, I mean, if we're talking in reference to Tom Brady, everybody wants to say, like, oh, did you know when you played him and, when he won that first Super Bowl? And, of course, nobody knew. And anybody that followed this season, Tom was really a complimentary piece. It wasn't about throwing the football. I mean, I think in the Super Bowl, he did win the MVP, but he threw for like 140 yards or something like that in the game. So it wasn't about, did you see the Tom Brady that would be to come in those early moments? And I would say no, other than what I saw in that game was, with a minute to go in the game and us having the momentum and us, kind of coming back and tying the game and everything kind of turning over to our side. What I saw was that the Patriots put the ball in Tom Brady's hands, and they weren't afraid to do that. And Tom did what he always did. And if there was one glimpse of who Tom Brady was or who he would become in that game, it was that last drive. That they didn't play afraid. He didn't play afraid. He stepped up and made the huge plays that he needed to make to move his team down and set him up for the game-winning field goal. And that would become, to me, what made Tom Brady the greatest quarterback of all time. You can look at a lot of different things that he did well. But to me, he was the best quarterback in the big moments that we had ever seen. And so that, to me, is what always elevated him. And that was the one glimpse I got in that game of, now when I look back, there it was. What became his MO, what became who Tom Brady was and was known for, it was right there in front of me in that first game, even though it might have been clouded by the fact that we're not throwing it all over the place and we're not doing all these crazy things.
Sure.
It was still there in the midst of that game, with what many might call a below average, stat line, that was still there, that you saw, what was inside of Tom Brady and what really made him special.
Like you said, you've been preaching it. Always take the layups. Just take the layups, and that'll get you far. NFL Network analyst Kurt Warner. You can see Kurt every Sunday on NFL Network's NFL Game Day morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. We appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you so much. We hope you come back and party with us and talk ball with us again soon, man.
All right, I'm always down. So appreciate you having me on, and enjoy the rest of the season.
If you enjoyed hearing from Kurt Warner, Foxborough Rush airs every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We talk all things Patriots with people like him, Michael Lombardi, more each and every week. Available on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you get your podcasts.
Man, that conversation with Kurt Warner was awesome. Love hearing everything he has to say about Drake Maye. For Patriots fans, continue to be optimistic about Drake Maye, the quarterback, because of everything you just heard from Kurt Warner. Again, I want to hammer it home. The Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah.
The guy knows a thing or two playing quarterback in the league. We'll now send, as always, that was one special guest to another, Michael Lombardi of VSiN joining us. He's Michael Lombardi of VSiN. You also catch him on the GM Shuffle, and of course, Coach with Bill Belichick as well. Michael, always good having you on the show. How you doing today, my friend?
I am good. Thank you. Good to be here. Thank you, Travis. George?
Always good having you on. Now, as last week we wanted to talk about the Patriots win, but we got sidetracked by some stuff happening beyond the coaching in the front office. This week, coming off a loss 28-22 to the Rams, where they were in it at the end, but coaching showed its face around, and it was Sean McVay against a first-year head coach. We keep looking for consistency with this team, but we're not getting it, Michael. What stood out to you this past Sunday about the lack of consistency and especially lack of coaching we saw on the field?
Well, I just felt like it was going to be a bad matchup for the Patriots because defensively, that was going to be a challenge. This Ram team, the week before had played poorly against Miami, but, their offensive line was intact. They had Puka Nacua back. They had Cooper Kupp. So I think to me this was going to be a tough challenge. And the front of the Rams, their defensive front, was going to be hard for the Patriots to block. They actually blocked them better than I thought they would. But, when your team's inconsistent, it looks like the coaching is inconsistent. They can't seem to correct some of the mistakes that they make. Yeah, I thought the zero blitz on second down call for the touchdown early to Cooper Kupp. When you have a rookie quarterback, the last thing you want to do is you make a bad call there. And I'm sure Coach Covington would like to have it back. You make a bad call there, now you're down, and you have your quarterback has to throw it all the time. You want to keep the game tight to the last 6 minutes of the game. Make them drive it down the field, but they gave up too many big explosive plays, and Shaw and Matthew Stafford was sensational. So it's part of being a bad team. I mean, that's just what it is. You're just not good enough. You can't convert third downs at a high enough level. You can't keep the ball away from the opponent.
Sort of zooming in on Drake Maye here, Michael. I mean, we heard Kurt Warner earlier in the show. He's high on the kid. He likes what he sees from him so far. Now that we've had a handful of starts here, where are you at with him, Michael, current day? I mean, the development of Drake Maye, what are you seeing when you watch him specifically?
Well, you still see some mistakes. I think you see some, he holds the ball too long. I don't know really who he was throwing the ball to on the interception. I mean, I have no idea where that was going. I know they said there was some miscommunication. I don't even understand the route concept that they were trying to run, especially that he threw the ball behind the receiver. So, look, I think it's all part of a day's work of a young quarterback who didn't have a lot of starts in college. And I think they're learning about him and what he's good at running. And I think he's learning about how to play professional football. And I think he's got a great upside to him. He's obviously got to learn how to get more consistent. He's got to be able to play better under pressure. I mean, look, the Tennessee game, he threw an interception on the last drive of the game. They just didn't catch it. In this game, he throws an interception on the last drive of the game. They caught it. He's got to stop making those mistakes and critical plays during the game. But that's called growing up. That's part of what you're going to have to go through when you play a young quarterback and the rest of the team isn't good around them. And I think the biggest issue with the Patriots is their inability to really get control of the game with their offensive line.
Yeah, I think that's a big part. Michael, we've spoken about earlier the week on this show. There's one offensive lineman I'd bring back as a starter. That'd be Mike Onwenu. We'll see David Andrews down the road. But I'd like you to point out what we've seen on the field from him. What about off the field? Because his leadership at the podium has been tremendous. We've seen him, the mic'd up clips, the guy on the sideline cheering on this defense. What about the off the field stuff that you've looked for in franchise quarterbacks when you're an NFL exec that stands out to you about Drake Maye?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he's got all those things. I think the question you got to ask yourself is the player development going to be there? How good's the coaching? Where can you take the player? The player wants to go somewhere. Where can you take them to? We've seen that. Look, I mean, Josh McDaniels made Mac Jones look a lot better than Mac Jones has looked since he left him. So coaching really matters to get to another level that you're going to have to get to. And I think that's going to be the fundamental question the Patriots have to address in the offseason. Do they have the right offense? Do they have the right offensive coordinator? Do they have the right system in place, right? I think that's all going to come down to it. Are they building the right kind of team? Because the longer the season goes, it becomes harder, and this is going to eventually become Mayo's program. He can't.
Yeah.
It's no longer Belichick's program. It's going to be his program, and the further you get into that program, how good is it?
Yeah, sort of following up there, because the Diana Rossini report was that this coaching staff is safe for 2025. I wonder how that landed for you, because I read it and I thought, already? I mean, all these games left? What if the bottom falls out of this thing the rest of the season? Why are they safe already? How did that land with you?
Well, I landed. I never thought they were going to be in trouble because they're going to blame everything on Bill. Right. And Mr. Kraft saw Mayo 7 years ago and identified him as a great coach, so he's not going to give up on it after a year.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the win-loss record really matters. I think this was predetermined. I think it was preset that he was going to come back, and so be it. He comes back, and we'll see. Now, that doesn't mean the coaching staff comes back. That just means Mayo comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that report stuck out to me too. I agree with you, Michael. Like, as the start was and how rough it was, the best defense I could give Gerard Mayo was that Robert Kraft handpicked him. He attached him to the hip with, like you said, 7 years ago, 5, whatever it was, saying he'd be the next head coach of the Patriots, not just a future head coach, along with everything else. But when I see that report, the offense has developed. We've seen more pre-snap motions. We've seen Drake grow and making anticipatory throws, which is showing the development of him. But the defense was the reason that they lost this past Sunday. When we see those reports, stuff can change. It's week 11. When we get to week 18, we'll see how it goes. But does that jump out at you too? If you watch this defense and you go, now is when you put out that report? Or do you think it's something where Diana Rossini puts this out and it combats reports of last week of them making phone calls around the league?
Well, I think that you knew there was going to be an answer to the phone call report, right? You knew that. Okay, so I think that's part of Kraft PR 101. So you knew that was going to come out. You had to expect that. Look, I think to me the bigger question that really needs to be addressed is if Mayo is such a good defensive coordinator, and that's what his specialty is, why is the defense so inconsistent? I think that's the fundamental question that needs to be asked is why aren't they better on defense? They've got really good players. They signed all those guys.
Yeah.
But to me, they got out coached on Sunday defensively. I think to me, the only reason the game stayed within 6 points was because the Rams were trying to run out the clock, not trying to keep scoring. I think the Rams would have put 30 on them if they had the opportunity.
If you enjoy Michael Lombardi stopping on Foxborough Rush, make sure to head over wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Prime. Like, subscribe, download, rate, and review. Go to the YouTube page, hit the subscribe button as well. Nesson YouTube page, that is. That's Foxborough Rush. New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with guests all throughout the week.
As someone who's been an architect of a franchise, of a roster, you look at the holes with this Patriots team. Wide receiver, you talked about the offensive line. I think they just lack playmakers, period. We could call it that. Sort of take us behind the curtain of how they should build this. So, okay, we all like Drake Maye, great. Is it offensive line? And also, how do you sort of allocate draft, free agency? How would you almost attack this from the ground up and build around Drake Maye?
Well, it's hard to find offensive linemen in free agency, right? They're not out there.
Right.
They cost too much money. They're hard to get to. But I would put a priority on offensive and defensive linemen. I mean, to me, that's the game, and they're in position to do it. They have a ton of cap room. They have a ton of draft picks. To me, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow the Detroit Lions model. They picked Penny Sewell. The Bengals picked Jamar Chase. Right. Great player. They can score a lot of points, but they can't control the game. Their offensive line is terrible. So I would put all my resources not only in drafting offensive linemen, but player development. I mean, one of the reasons we were so good in New England wasn't because we had this keen eye for offensive line talent. It was because we had a great offensive line coach in Dante Scarnecchia who was able to develop the Shaq Masons, who was able to develop some of these young players, Sebastian Vollmer, and Nate Solder, and got them to play at a very high level. Ryan Wendell, that they find, David Andrews. You get these guys and play good, and that goes a long way. And I think, to me, there's two kind of programs you have to build as a general manager. You got to draft players, but you also have to have a player development program, which a lot of teams don't have. Which I don't see the Patriots really doing a great. I mean, they're developing the quarterback, but I think it's his talent we're seeing develop. We're not necessarily seeing the development of the quarterback. I think they're two different things.
Right.
Yeah, the one position coach I'll give them that we know can develop is Mike Pellegrino, the cornerbacks coach, who's a carryover from Bill's staff, has been with the Patriots since 2015. You bring up how expensive it can be to land an offensive tackle, and this free agency class is weak. But when we look at all the cap room they've had, and this again goes back to last week's conversation, Michael, where when I read the reports, I'm hearing a meddling owner. Will the front office for the Patriots, will the Patriots have a full reign, you think, to go with into free agency to get a receiver or a tackle, or is that just too good to be true because of how hands-on the Crafts want to be?
They're going to look. They own the team. They removed the greatest coach of all time so they could coach this, so they could be involved in their team. I mean, so I think, to me, they're going to be involved. Now, that's not saying they're going to go down there and pick the 4-string left tackle. I'm not saying that. But when you start talking about putting money into things, they're going to want to know who's making the decision, who they like. They're going to check and double check. They're not going to take someone's word for it and go for it. I mean, he's even admitted that he felt like that he felt like he didn't have enough checks and balances on Belichick. He won 6 Super Bowls with Belichick. How many more checks and balances do you need? Just look at the trophy case. But, I don't think that's in his personality. I think he wants to be involved, and he has every right to be involved. He owns the team.
Michael, this offseason, from where the Patriots sit, are they pitching themselves as, hey, listen, we have this young stud rookie quarterback. We have tons of cap space. Come here, be a part of Patriots Dynasty 2.0. Or is it really, for your experience, is it literally these players are just looking for money? Show me the money. When you kind of go out into free agency, are the Patriots pitching that we have this great thing working, come be a part of it? Or is it literally just, we can give you the most money? How are they attractive to players?
It's money. I mean, there's the first phase of free agency is all about money.
Right.
When that phase gets worn out, where Bill made a really good living was when that phase got worn out, you were able to get players that wanted to be a part of winning that weren't getting a contract somewhere else.
Okay.
And so you could get some bargain basements, but that's only in the second phase. The first phase is all about money. You think Calvin Ridley really cares about whether he went to New England or he went to Tennessee? He went there with tax-free state. He didn't want to pay Massachusetts state tax, and if you're not going to compensate him above that, then he's not going to go to your place. So It's really, we learned that 1994 started free agency, and we were taking players out to dinner and limos and doing all that. Now it's just about how much you're going to pay me. It's what's your tax rate in their state? How much are you going to pay me? What am I getting back? And how are we spreading the contract? Oh, I'll sign with you. It's no longer the recruiting element. It's just all about money.
Especially in a state that has a millionaire's tax in effect as well. So the extra tax on every dollar you make over $1 million as well. Michael, you took us back to 94 real quick. You have a good recruitment story in free agency that you maybe thought it'd be shaky, and then you landed the guy.
Well, I mean, look, we spent a lot of time on Reggie White in 94, couldn't get him. Tried to like crazy. We spent a lot of time on Andre Rison. We got him, which really hurt our team because we went for a receiver. We should have signed Bryce Pop. There's a lot of those stories. I think my favorite one is the best thing I ever did. We signed Keenan McCardle, and basically for nothing. And he ended up playing how many years in the National Football League? And we took him off of a recommendation of a friend of mine down in Houston, and he had the best hands of anybody. But it's always back. You're living and learning. Part of the hard part of the cap in 93, 94 was you had your team already built. So we had a team. We had Mike Johnson played inside linebacker. He's one of our better players, so he's one of our highest paid players. But you can't have an inside linebacker as your highest paid player. You need to put the money somewhere else, and that became a little bit of a problem too.
Well, damn it, Michael. All this sounds fun to me. I mean, is the fun gone out of the front office? Do you think we'll ever see those days that you lived through, or is it all transactional now?
No, well, it's all, you got some guy in his underwear in his basement in Des Moines telling you based on these analytics, this is who we should sign. So it takes all the fun out of it.
Right.
I'm not saying you shouldn't have some form of analytics, but somebody who doesn't understand what football is all about, it's hard to have analytics.
Yeah, completely hear that one out. Now, Michael, I want to look ahead real quick. Thanksgiving Day, it's a good spread of games. It's mainly the teams playing. The Lions and the Packers the rest of the teams aren't that good. But for someone that's dedicated their life to football, what is a Thanksgiving Day like for you? What's a tradition you can have? Because you're either preparing for a game, you're on the field for a game, or I know now what you do with VSiN, you're working anyway.
I mean, I love Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday. You get an opportunity to watch 3 games into the night. You have family, friends. The TV set. When I was a kid growing up, I can still remember Clint Longley throwing Roger Staubach got hurt. I was a huge Washington Redskin fan growing up. And, it was Thanksgiving at my aunt's house. I think I was 10 or 11 years old, and Roger Staubach got hurt, and I was really kind of happy because I felt now the Redskins could beat the Cowboys. And then Clint Longley comes off the bench and throws a touchdown pass to Drew Pearson. And, I went to school on Monday in tears. So it's fun. It's the memories that you have playing football in the playground, with your family, and whether it's the Kennedys on out there at the Cape, or whether it's in your own backyard. Football, family, and friends is the best.
Hey, Michael, last one for me. It's a little bit outside of the box, which won't surprise you. But, the trending topic now is all the rumors of Deion Sanders to the NFL as a head coach, maybe the Cowboys, maybe whoever. When you kind of watch what he's doing in Colorado, I'm sure you know him personally, like you know everybody. But do you think Deion as a head coach would translate to the NFL from what you see?
I think Deion's already said it. We wrote an article today on the Daily Coach about Deion, and he said, I got my kickstand down. And what he meant was, it didn't mean he doesn't want to be a head NFL coach. It just means he's really happy where he is at the moment. And Deion's made the statement that he thinks he would have a hard time coaching guys who make more money than him. And I think that's probably true. I think there's some parts of the college game that has now become a pro game. And there's some coaches. Nick Saban was like this. Nick Saban wanted the old way of recruiting. He liked to talk about the drapes and the table settings in some kid's home. Now that he had 50 guys lined up at his door who wanted raises after the season last year, he didn't like that. And so it's a little bit for everybody else. I think Deion likes this setup where he has it. Whereas if he comes to pro football, you can't coach hard. You have to be gentle and kinder because we're going to go to Dairy Queen after the game. You have to be nice, So I think to me, that's where it gets into a little bit of an issue.
He's Michael Lombardi. Catch him on VSiN, Coach, the GM Shuffle as well. Michael, we'll have a break from you. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. We'll see you the week after. Always appreciate the insight, my friend. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
This wraps up this episode of Foxborough Rush. He's Travis Thomas. I'm George Balekji. Want to give a shout out to Kurt Warner, man. He took his time. Him and Trav are boys. We'll have him back on the show. I'll crash that combo, but thank you for him for stopping by and pouring knowledge into us. Same goes for Michael Lombardi. And same goes to all the listeners. Thank you for making us a part of your day. Wherever you get your podcast, please like, subscribe, download, rate, and review. And if you're on Nesson's YouTube page, hit the subscribe button as well. He's Trav. I'm George. We'll see you guys Monday with a new episode of Foxborough Rush.